Hello, everyone. Welcome to Monday Night Lights. I am your host, Keisha King Benton, and we are talking about Islam. We're talking about the Islaming of America that is really not being paid attention to. We got all of these America first. I just love America. I will do anything for America. We are America alone. The only thing I care about is America. But the funny thing is none of these people seem to be paying attention to America. They got their eye on Israel. They got their eye on everything but America. And while they're, which I believe is on purpose, while they're trying to distract you with all this stuff over here, that's what the enemy does, distract you to plant more seeds, excuse me, to plant seeds in your life, to plant thoughts, seeds in your mind that the enemy can come back and later and sprinkle a little water on to try to get them to grow. The distraction. While Islamists are running for mayor and looking like they're going to win one of the biggest cities or the biggest city in our country. You got Dearborn, Michigan. You got places in Texas. We have it's like these little cells that are popping up all over the place that are not only the thing that bothers me about this, and my good friend Teach 'em Chuck Littleton is going to be on in just a few. Yes, Karen, the enemy is hard at work. You have these little cells that are popping up, and it's like Israel, who would be for Christians, they're a natural ally. They are a natural ally. Why? Because we worship the same God. We worship the same God. And we have an infiltration of another deity, a little g God, an unseen realm being who calls himself Allah, and he's coming into our country and trying to take it over. These are not my words. This is what they say. But to go ahead and talk about this, I'm going to bring up my good friend, Mr. Teach 'em Chuck Littleton, because we're going to talk about the history about this, and we're going to talk about what is going on right now today that many Americans are missing. As you can see, this really pisses me off. It really does, because you know why? Because we had to hear all of these people, tell us, when Trump was running for office, if we, in the primaries, is everybody knows I was for DeSantis, and we had to hear these people belittle us and tell us how anti-American we were because we didn't support Trump in the primary. And many of us, myself included, it wasn't that I didn't like Trump. I just, whatever, I had my own reasons, but I got behind him once he was the nominee. These same people are now focused on Israel. It's the craziest thing. No loyalty. These people have absolutely no loyalty. They have you can't trust anything that they say because they're not even consistent. It ain't even been a year. And they have no loyalty. But that says something. Anyway, let's go ahead and get into it. I didn't have a montage because I really feel like I can just riff on this at this moment. But we are going to play some clips. And I want to bring up my good friend, Mr. Teach 'em Chuck. 1 second. Hello, sir.
What's up?
Well, excuse me, y'all. I'm perturbed. I'm pissed. I'm watching Mom Donnie. I'm watching these rallies. I'm watching these disrespectful behind the scenes Islamists. They junk, and the loudest, the biggest mouths, the biggest big mouths on the right. I don't see nothing. What's up? Why all of a sudden they can't see? they just so blind. They have no idea what's going on with the Islamists. That they
Right.
got all the smoke for the Jews. I don't understand. And mind you, the Jews are assimilated. I don't hear no Jews chanting in my American streets. Not that it's not their American streets, but
I
you know
get it.
what I'm saying. I don't hear no Jews talking about that they want to tear down America, that they want America to die, and that death to America and all this. I don't hear that. But the biggest mouths, they got all the smoke for basically everything else but that. What's up with that?
Yeah. I don't know if that was rhetorical or you really want me to try to respond.
Well, it was rhetorical, and you can respond if you like.
Yeah. Well, there are a lot of things. There are quite a few reasons I think. Um, One in particular, one of the first ones that comes to mind, one of the first reasons that come to mind for me is it's a major feature of left wing thought, and that is this this need for a sense of purpose. It's sort of like for example, the left or leftists, they despise America because it doesn't quite live up to its ideals, or at least from their perspective, it's the way they see it, right? It sort of falls short. And so while everyone is talking about how wonderful it is, how fortunate they think they are, and how blessed they are to live in America, right? The left, they sit back and they go, wait a minute, not so fast. You think it's great, you think it's all wonderful, and that's because, you don't see what I see. You don't see what you should see, right? You don't see reality, or you don't see reality such as it should be seen. And so I think some on the right or the so-called right are falling into this trap as well, where it's like, well, I sort of said this last week, right? It's like if everyone is sort of looking at the obvious, and I tried as best I could within a short period of time to give viewers a somewhat of an insight into the psychology or the beliefs of Islam, right, straight from the horse's mouth. And it's like for them, it's they don't it's like they don't believe it, they don't want to see it, because they're so caught up in their own sense of intellectual and moral superiority
Mm-hmm.
that they are going to sort of peel back some hidden layer, because in their mind, whatever the
It
problem
and
can't
they.
be right. Well, see, the thing is, the problem can't be as simple as it seems, Keisha. See, everything that you're talking about, it can't just be that simple, right?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in this age of this age of enlightenment, right? Since the dawn of the liberal age, beginning in the late 17th century, around thereabout. To them, as I said, it sort of betrays their liberal sensibilities, because in their mind, we should have arrived. And when I say we, I mean, like, we as in humanity, we should have crossed the Rubicon, where um, we shouldn't, people shouldn't behave in this manner. And to the extent that they do, when I say people, I'm talking about uh, Muslims. Many of them, they say, well, they shouldn't behave in this way, given all of the things that all of the moral, uh, discoveries and scientific discoveries and these various things that we have, that we've achieved over the last 2.5 centuries or so. There is no way that this should still be happening. And so they look for a reason. Right. And then in their minds, something must be throwing a monkey wrench, so to speak, in the grand scheme of things, because in this sort of natural progression toward ever more advanced stages of wisdom, knowledge, and understanding, that these people shouldn't be behaving this way, and so it can't be as simple as you're making it out to be, Keisha. Something else must be going on.
What's that thing? It's the it's like, is it Occam's razor? The
Yeah, yeah.
simplest. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, the simplest, and that's the thing. William of Ockham, yes,
Mm-hmm.
is this proposition that this the most simple answer
Mm-hmm.
is the answer.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't make you smarter, because you can overly complicate things that don't need to be overly complicated.
You know
Uh,
what? I'm sorry. Really, what I find so interesting is, y- like you're saying, like the left and Islamists and this whole thing, but even the woke right, they're literally saying the same. They the tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't know if it's in the, I don't think it's in the Quran, but it's in maybe a hadith or something like that,
mhm,
where they're like, there's a Jew behind every corner. We got to go get him. That's literally
yeah,
what, is that not what the woke right is doing right
yeah,
now? It,
yeah,
that is literally, how did
yeah,
conservatives become aligned? They're mimicking the same words, they're mimicking the same ideas as the
mhm,
left, which Islamists are literally saying. You got Islamists in America saying we ain't got no rights. Y'all are racist. How dare you come over here and talk that junk? Have
mhm,
See, I watch these clips, and this is where this is coming from. It's like they're all on one accord. They're
yeah,
all singing the same song at the same time, and I don't like that junk. It
yeah.
is disturbing to me.
Well, yeah, and if you go back, during the whole, like for example, with the Occupy Wall Street, that whole movement,
Yeah.
uh, that was a left wing phenomena, that we
Hmm.
saw, the whole Occupy. And this is why, I always say that I reject certain terms, such as, say, like populism, for example, because populism has no
And capitalism.
fidelity.
You don't like,
Right.
you and
Yeah.
Chad taught me, like, don't say capitalism because that's a Marxist. They can't say the free market system. There's
Yeah.
another one.
Yeah. Yeah. Because right, right. Because capitalism, I mean, it's right.
Derogatory.
It's a pejorative, but it's an ideological concept that
Mhm.
uh, gives rhyme and reason, or justification to the seemingly sort of natural order of things, such as they are. When you're talking about the order of things, and of course, in the mind of Marx and Engels and others of their ilk, you're talking about economic relationships. And
Mhm.
so all things that give legitimacy, or, as I said, rhyme and reason to these economic relationships fall under the banner of capitalism. This is why Marx and Engels state in the Communist Manifesto explicitly that they support, that Marxists, or communists, should I say, support all manner of revolution. It doesn't matter what it is. They get behind all forms of revolution. And so, I, like you said, Keisha, they all sort of say the same thing. You mentioned that famous hadith where Muhammad states that the end times will commence when the tree begins to talk to the believer, notifying them that there's a Muslim behind me, come and kill him. That, I mean, there's a Jew behind,
That's the
there's a
two.
Jew hiding behind me,
Mhm.
come and kill him.
Yeah.
I something that Constantine Kessin. Some of you, I'm pretty sure most of you are familiar with Constantine Kessin.
Yeah, I
He
just
says that,
found them, maybe like last year, trigonometry.
yeah, yeah. He says that when it comes to the right, and even I believe Douglas Murray was stated that he began to notice a trend amongst the what he called the irreligious right. He said that you don't really see, and
Mm.
Douglas Murray could be wrong on this. I'm still trying to unpack it, but I do understand what he means when he says that he sees this anti-Semitism coming it began to crop up among the irreligious right. Kind of more of your kind of secular right wingers. But
You know what? So what I noticed, and tell me what you think about this, and no shade to Catholics. I mean, kind of, but not. I mean, not in this instance. But I see a lot of Catholics who, in their practice, their faith practice, they are more just ritualistic and not as scripture heavy, I guess. Kind of leaning on all other books and other things outside of scripture. Not that you can't read other books, that's not the thing, but they seem to draw more. I guess I'm trying to say they tend to stray from orthodoxy a bit,
okay.
um as far as practicing the Christian faith. And I don't know, I feel like I think there's something there, because to me it kind of comes off as irreligious. Not irreligious, but not orthodox Christian. And I don't know. I just see a lot of people who happen to be Catholic. They are the ones that seem to go down this road. I don't know.
Yeah,
Not all, obviously, not
yeah,
all, but I do
yeah,
see.
yeah, and of course there's a lot of sort of controversy over the Second Vatican Council.
Hmm.
But I guess we don't necessarily have time to get too deep into that. But I'm not prepared at this moment to say whether it is Protestants or Catholics who have a tendency to be more anti-Jewish or anti-Semitic or what have you.
And that's fair. There's not enough
Of course,
evidence for it, but yeah.
yeah, of course, as I mentioned before. Well, I don't know if I mentioned on this show, but a lot of people are familiar with, of course, Martin Luther's criticisms of Jews. He famously put it in a book titled "The Jews and Their Lies."
I
Um,
think you mentioned it on
so
here.
yeah, so there's a lot. So there's a lot, but so I wanted to mention something Constantine said. Well, I lost my train of thought for a
I'm
second.
sorry, that was me.
Oh, okay, my bad. Well, yeah, you're good. You're good. Thank you for having me. It's your show. Interrupt whenever you like. He said that when it comes to the right, there's a lot of talk on the right about globalists. I mean, and when you say globalists or globalism, so on and so forth, it's hard. You don't really. It's hard to put a name on it. It's hard to put a face to it,
Hmm.
because one of the major cost celebs, if you will, of this new crop or this current iteration of conservatism is this belief, of course, that the sovereign has been betrayed, meaning the voting public, right? And that we have all of these international and globalist bodies and institutions that have an untoward sway and an unconstitutional sway and immoral sway and influence on how we go about our affairs here domestically. And we say, well, as taxpayers and as voters, we didn't sign up for that. We didn't sign up for any sort of open border or any kind of climate changed type agenda to cut our emissions and these sorts of things. And we didn't sign on for that. And so again, the major cost celeb of the modern conservative iteration is to try to reestablish American sovereignty, right? To strengthen the very concept of the nation state.
Yeah.
And so, you get a lot of this anti-Israel, anti-Jewish sentiment because there's a lot of erroneous beliefs out here that aren't true, or hence they're erroneous. This idea that Israel has an inordinate amount of sway on America's foreign policy, because there's this belief that America has been sold out, right? Because we are too busy trying to quote unquote be the world's police.
Yeah.
And of course, that's not true. It's just simply on its face, just in a couple of sentences, you can dismiss that, because what is really, and of course, you have a lot of fiscal hawks out there, as they call them, on the conservative side, who talk about the massive debt crisis
Mm-hmm.
we are existing within as I speak. And yes, that is very true, but that is due to a bunch of insane petty socialist left wing agenda items that have been, a lot of these progressive agenda items from the time of Reconstruction, and it really went into extreme. It went into this kind of it escalated, is what I'm trying to
Mm-hmm.
say, under FDR, so on and so forth. And so, what we have in our country today that is really destroying us financially, fiscally, is, of course, these unfunded liabilities. It isn't so much about our defense budget and these kinds of things.
Mm-hmm.
That isn't at all the case. It is our entitlement program that is bankrupting the country.
Mm-hmm.
But you have a lot on the right who will say, well, we're doing all of this stuff for Israel because it would seem as though Israel is constantly embroiled in some kind of conflict. And like I said, when you start to talk about that, then that's when you start to get into the meat and potatoes of what this issue is really all about. Because
Mm-hmm.
the problem is, for me, it isn't that, you look at Israel and you can criticize it for this or that or whatever the case may be. That's all fine and well, that's all fine and good. But when there is a disproportion, when it's out of step and out of alignment with what is reasonably justifiable or explained or explainable, then that's when you have a problem. Because considering the fact, and here's what I mean, considering the fact that Israel is a democratic country,
Mm-hmm.
same as many of our allies in Asia, many of our allies in Europe, so on and so forth, Australia, and what have you, Canada. I mean, if you look at, Trudeau is no longer prime minister. I forgot the current prime minister in Canada.
Yeah.
As of right now, he's not in the news as much as Trudeau was, but
Yeah, he just stepped in it big time. Did you see what
yeah,
happened?
I know he did something, but
What an
my,
idiot.
right, but my point is, you have these various uh, you know, European, I'm not European, American allies like
Mhm,
France, like Great Britain, like Germany, like Australia, like Canada. I can go on and on down the list.
mhm,
Who, at well, now, especially now, they have these left wing governments in power, and many will criticize a lot of our European allies for allowing the death of Europe to occur vis-a-vis not just Islamic unvetted Islamic immigration, but you see the draconian lockdowns in terms of their free speech practices in Great Britain and so on and so forth. But you do not see a lot of online clamoring for the United States to uncouple itself from some of our aforementioned traditional allies, even when those very same allies are doing things that are counterintuitive to the long-term survival of Western civilization.
mhm. You
It's
have
not
you have more Americans that got more smoke for Israel
right. Yeah,
than they do for the UK, who has literally, I mean, if
right.
they had
And
taken over
that's my
the
point.
UK, like,
That's my
how is
point.
that not a problem for you? That's
And what's so ironic, and that's the point I was trying to make, Keisha, is that Israel is the only country on the front line that's actively doing the fighting. All the while, traditional European mega powers are just, have just laid them. They've crumbled. They're simply lying down right now. And that's what's so unfortunate. So that's when you began to question. I like Dinesh D'Souza's proposition when Dinesh says that there's something unique going on here when Israel is held to a standard that no one else is held to.
exactly.
Because again, there's something unique and something special about and it's just Yeah, so there are a lot of things at play, but like I said, I'm noticing the tremendous and immense hypocrisy. And like I said, that's probably a whole nother live in
Yeah.
and of itself, because let's say many conservatives want to blame the Jew or blame Jews for the fall of Christian civilization and for the fall of the West, and so on, because of whether it be the Jews and their outsized influence over the music industry and the film industry and academia and so on and so
Hmm.
forth. And these are strongholds of leftist and left wing influence. And so that's where a lot of that criticism comes from, as well. This notion, this idea that Jews are disproportionately Marxist or disproportionately communist.
Hmm.
And that's not true in terms of sheer number, and it's not true in terms of proportionality. Of course, they are more Arab Muslim Marxists than there are Jewish Marxists, and that's perhaps maybe something that we can
Is that
talk
just
about.
by sheer number of,
No, no,
or is it
I
like
would say
a
no,
per capita?
I would say by proportion as well. And when people ask the question, and I know we haven't even really started to touch on Islam yet, but I'll just briefly say this, that there are a lot of people out there who don't have a hateful bone or have an anti-Semitic bone in their body, but they're just trying to approach it intellectually and critically, and they do notice a trend that there always seems to be a powerful actor, so to speak, or someone who is of Jewish extraction, who's always sort of behind some some wicked
A Jew
plot.
behind every corner.
Yeah, yeah. Whether it be this guy Harari at the World Economic Forum, or whether it
Mhm.
be George Soros, or whether it be
Right.
a lot of these bad actors in academia, like Noam Chomsky and Norman Finkelstein, and
Mhm.
Saul Alinsky, if I'm not mistaken, is also Jewish. Marx himself
Mhm.
was of Jewish extraction, of course, and so there's this constant. And so it's not like, and especially here, especially if people follow my content, the people to whom I criticize and have a lot of smoke for, all of these so-called black leaders, black community activists and whatnot. There was a lot of powerful Jewish intellectual influence and Jewish money behind a lot of these groups, whether it be the NAACP and the Black Panther
Mhm.
Party and so on and so forth.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people go, well, wait a minute, Chuck, but I'm seeing something happen. What's going on here? Why is this happening? And again, it's not that they are anti-Semitic. They just genuinely want to know, from an objective, from an intellectual standpoint, what is the reason for this.
Right.
And so there's that,
Mhm.
and you can't ask that question in good
For
faith, and there's
sure.
nothing anti-Semitic about asking that question.
Absolutely.
But I think that there are a lot of people who start there, and then it dovetails into this kind of Nick Fuentes like extreme, where it's like, well, there's Jewish power is sort of like behind everything. And
Mhm.
so again, that's when you see that horseshoe theory of this entangling between the left and the right,
Mhm.
because that's what populism is. It's this kind of popular democratic front, where there is this where I guess the political structure or political system tends to kind of stand on end, and it becomes vertical, it becomes less horizontal and more so vertical, where it becomes an us against them kind of thing. And
Mm.
so there is um this attack, or this hatred, or whatever you want to call it, however you want to describe it,
Mhm.
towards power, and considering the fact that the Jews have a very high visibility profile, incommensurate with their overall numbers, then of course they must be doing something untoward. So that's how that works. But I have que-
Such a
but
leftist way to think.
I have theories and ideas and rationales as to why I believe a lot of Jews fall into this kind of thinking, right?
Mm,
Right? Why many of Jews in the beginning, the early part of the 20th century, were what they called red diaper babies. Why a lot of Jews that came over to the United States were in fact of the left, and it has a lot to do with their constant and consistent status as minorities since the since Hadrian dispelled and vanquished Jews from the Holy Land in the second century. This has especially been the case of Jews because it is very easy to get into the mind of a minority population
mhm,
surrounded by what they perceive to be very hostile, very intimidating forces when they're in such small number. Because one of the things that Marxism does, we can get into the theories of Marxism and we could talk about the means of production and all the stuff. You can break it down from an intellectual standpoint, but if you understand communism from a psychological point of view, one of the key things that communism, Marxism does is it provides a person with a sense of security by giving them a sense of community. And that is
mm,
especially key because and this is part and parcel of the human experience, particularly when you have a society that is multi-ethnic and multiracial. There's always going to be this sense of struggle between assimilation and annihilation, existentialism versus, for example, you hear this term. We talk about blacks, talk about, like, say, for example, acting white,
mhm,
right?
mhm,
Now, simply put, of course, the majority within the society, you can say in most cases, in most instances, are going to be the people who quote unquote make the rules. And so if you find a minority group, whether they be a religious minority, an ethnic minority, or whatever the case may be, they have to do as the old saying goes, when in Rome, right? They must
mhm.
do as,
Yeah,
because there are rules and guidelines and standards that have been set forth,
right.
right? But uh, there is something to say of not just individual identity, but this kind of collective identity. Even when that collective identity is maladaptive, when juxtaposed to what is expected of the minority group within the host country, there's this reluctance to kind of rid yourself of your former ways because you may feel as though there's something unique that is being lost about who you are as a person,
Mm,
particularly as it relates to the group that you have this kind of camaraderie with, because
mhm.
all human beings are inherently partial to their own group, whether it
Yeah,
be their racial group or whatever. It doesn't matter. And see, again, that is part and parcel of the human experience. And that's
mhm,
why intellectuals, right? These overeducated and underpaid individuals use these minorities as fodder because they tell them, because assimilation, Keisha, I know, I get it. We talk about it, and it's easier said than done. It doesn't mean that it shouldn't be done, but
mhm,
it is hard to do at times. So
mhm.
what you have, and you have these charismatic leaders, and again, this isn't just the United States. This happens all over the world. You
That's
have
right.
these charismatic leaders who emerge from within the minority group, oftentimes, maybe sometimes without the minority group, but they emerge and they act as spokespersons for the group who gets told by this charismatic that I have a shortcut. It's not that you
Mm,
have to assimilate into the wider society. You can continue to be how you are. You can continue to be what you are. Leave it up to me, and I'll get you the things that you rightfully deserve, because it's not fair that they are expecting you to surrender what it is that makes you unique. It is unfair that they expect you to surrender the thing that makes you you. And
you know what?
unfortunately, that
Go ahead.
thing that makes you you is has a deleterious effect on the whole of the society. Minorities are always utilized and exploited by these kinds of demagogues. It's just part and parcel of the human experience. Every society experiences this. And it's funny, Keisha, because the more open and the more tolerant a society is, the more it succumbs and the more it's susceptible to this kind of demagoguery. And so a
You
lot
know
of
what it
foreigners,
sounds like?
a lot of foreigners in the beginning, Keisha, in the 20th century, they were these radicals
Mhm.
because they were insecure.
It reminds me of when Satan went to Eve and said, "Did God really say? Did he really say? Do you really have to assimilate? I mean, do you really got to follow those rules? I mean, even though those rules have been established and they work, and those rules are part of why you're here. But did God really say you got to come together? You have to assimilate? You don't really have to do that. That is to me, communism, Marxism is the enemy's vehicle that everything that communists believe is literally the exact opposite of what God tells us to do. I mean, it's like on economic, if you want to do the on economics, it's against the Bible. Socially, it's against the Bible.
Yeah.
And what you just said, that's what that sounds like. When some charismatic leader, you don't really have to assimilate. You don't really have to follow those rules. You don't really have to abide by that standard. Make your
Like,
own.
yeah,
Follow mine.
yeah. I give people a book reference. This book is very hard to find. I can't remember. I can't think of the name of the author, but it's called The Ordeal of Civility. It talks about how just having a civil society and how difficult it is. And it's particularly written from the perspective, I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think the author is Jewish, but he talks about how Jews and their the difficulties they faced with trying to coincide and get along inside countries where they never quite felt like they belonged, and
Mm,
the people more or less did not want them there. And so a lot of them began to embrace a lot of these secular ideas, like the ideas of Marx and like the ideas of another Jewish intellectual like Sigmund Freud. And I
mhm,
can go on and on down the list. And how difficult that was, and especially in the case of someone like, say, like a Karl Marx. I think that Karl Marx had a lot of self-loathing about who he was, because Marx saw his Judaism as a source of pain. Not I mean, Karl Marx, still a human being, so I want to try and humanize him as much as I can. But certainly not going to lionize him or try to make excuses for him. But I believe that he saw his Jewish roots as a great source of pain and shame. Um, because if you know anything about history, the time in which Marx lived in Germany, or what will become Germany, he and his family were under immense pressure and suffered from immense persecution during his time. Particularly again when he was a child, and whatnot. And so I think that there was a lot of this idea that if we can sort of somehow distance ourselves from the thing that people hate us for, while we have to carry on this burden of being the peoples to whom God chose, you can see psychologically how they would begin to resent that, and almost sort of like begin to hate themselves
mm,
for having to carry this burden that they didn't ask for.
mm.
And,
I've
and
thought about that a lot, like, being a chosen person and all the, that people get mad at that, but I don't
yeah,
know if I want to be like
yeah,
the requirement that God had. I mean, the standard
yeah,
was high, you
yeah,
know. It was
and
that's a lot. Like they nobody, I don't know, but I don't think most people would be walking around,
right, yeah,
you know,
it's not a
it's not
great,
as easy as it.
yeah, it's not a great source of pride like ego. You want to walk around with it,
Yes.
and considering that many of them kind of internalized the anguish and maybe the envy and the jealousy they thought others perceived of them. And
True.
so they could see and understand perhaps how that would make someone else feel.
Mhm.
And so they this was what I firmly believe. Again, this is kind of me, playing, armchair psychologist,
Mhm.
Jordan Peterson style or whatever, to say that, like I said, many of them began to really disdain their Jewish heritage, their Jewish identity, because they felt as though others hated them for it. And so I want to get in the shoes of the other to let them know that I am not this person who you may or may not think walks around with this huge ego
Mhm.
because of who many of those around me, other our fellow Jews, who
Yeah.
we sort of claim to be.
Mhm.
And so they reject it,
Mhm.
and they hate, and that's why I think a lot of them kind of walk this route.
Yeah.
That's just one of the reasons, one of the explanations why I think that a lot of Jews fall into this very kind of hard line left wing thinking, because they resent that burden.
Mm. Well, they better, tighten up and look. It is what it is, and we got to, the American Jews, all Americans, we got to protect what God has given us. And I want to play this clip. This is a man that you introduced me to. This is Mr. Youssef
Masab Hassan Youssef, yeah.
Yes, let's. I want to get your reaction to this.
Okay.
Since October 7, I personally don't differentiate between Hamas and what's so-called Palestinians. Because actually there is no Palestinians. There are tribes. There is the tribe of Hamas, and there is the tribe of the Islamic Jihad, and there is the tribe of Khalil, and there is the tribe of Nablus. And each one has different interests, and all of them are conflicted. If they did not have Israel as the common enemy, they would kill each other. This is the reality
You
of
realize
what's
that's
so-called
common colonial
Palestine.
rhetoric?
You don't know what Palestine is. Actually, in fact, the keffiyeh that you are wearing, this is just a statement to show that you really lack the authenticity to represent the case. And what's so-called the cause, this is a human problem.
So you
The
just
cause must die. I think enough is enough. And now it's proven, and you are helping Hamas to prove it to the world that Palestine depends on the destruction of the state of Israel. And this is not acceptable, and we are not going to agree to it. And I tell you something, for the next 10 or 20 years, the Palestinian people will pay the bill that Hamas is caused today, and most likely in blood.
to you, Hamas and Palestinians are the same. They're one and the same.
After October 7, yes, there is no difference.
Really?
The vast majority of the Palestinian people support Hamas.
Really?
This is a fact. This is proven by statistics, and your silence now. You cannot even condemn Hamas and say that what they did on October 7 was an act of a savage group. You don't have that power.
Said I condemn.
On what
the
authority do you speak? You
question.
only speak on the authority of Hamas propaganda.
No, why do you say that I'm speaking on the authority of Hamas propaganda?
Because
when
if you were a decent human being, you can say that the thousands were killed on October 7. That was a crime against humanity. It was a genocide.
Well, what are your thoughts on that? Particularly her response.
What was her response toward the end after? What did she say?
Her not condemning, because she says she
Uh-huh.
condemns Hamas, but when you really get into it, she really doesn't. She tries to say, well, it's because it's the typical, it's because of what everybody else was doing to them, Chuck. It's not
No.
Hamas. I mean, they have a right to defend themselves. They are only acting this way because Israel is the aggressor and won't leave them alone, Chuck.
Well, no. Well, see, that's like I said last time. See, that was part of the propaganda. See, in the beginning, I mean, it may be hard for people to believe this, but in the beginning, the left was on the side of Israel in the beginning. Even some of the more outwardly radical left wingers around the world, but in the United States in particular, they were on the side of Israel. Why? Because it was apparent to everyone that Israel was, in fact, the nation that was being picked on. Right? You know, you hear about this oppressor oppressed dynamic, right? You talk about Marxism. I mean, it's more complicated than that, of course, but that's a good way of looking at it. And this is why the Palestinian identity had to be created in 1964 by the Soviet Union, because it had to give
Wait,
the
so let me ask you really quick. Okay, so was it was it Britain that created the Palestinians or the Soviet Union?
no the Soviets created them as their own separate entity.
Mhm.
The Arabs from the end of the First World War, I think the British mandate for Palestine, I think, was created by a UN resolution in the early 1920s. I can't remember the exact year, but I think it was 1922. And this went on and on and on for over 2.5 decades. And they could not figure out a plan. They could not figure out an agreement for peaceful cohabitation between all of the peoples that were there, right? Because even in the beginning, from the time of the Simon Bakokba rebellion against the Romans, a lot of Jews were scattered, but many of them stayed. And there was a consistent and constant Jewish presence in the Holy Land, even during the days of Roman and Ottoman occupation. So they never left. Okay. But under Ottoman, you muted, Keisha.
Oh, sorry. I'm pushing back because I know the other side's talking points and I want to
Hmm.
give them so you can push back. Okay, so what people would normally say is that the Palestinians, they were there the whole time, and Israel, the Jews were coming in and ripping people out of their homes and just I don't know where they was putting them, but they was just ripping. I mean, this is what they
No,
say. They say
right,
that
right.
they came in until they ran up in their houses and they
Mhm,
literally just
mhm.
took over the houses, ripped
Right.
people out of
What-
their homes,
right.
and I don't know where they went, but that's what they say.
Nah, that's not. No, that's what Mossad says. It gives the Arab collective. It gives them this collective. Even when you look at, for example, I mean, you look at Iran. Um, Shia Islam is the minority. I think I don't know exactly what the figures are, but only about maybe 10 to 15. I could be shortchanging it. I can't recall, but I'll just say about 10 to 15% of the world's Muslims are Shia. The rest of them are Sunni. But
Mhm.
Iran supports these ideologically different Muslim factions who are Sunni in their Islamic orientation. Even though Sunni and Shia are again, they're bitter rivals. Again, they will kill each other. When it comes down to the come down.
Oh wow.
But until they can get Israel out of the way, they
The enemy of my enemy is
yeah,
my or
yeah,
not that,
my
but
enemy is my friend,
oh
and then,
yeah.
the Sunni and the Shia, they'll settle their score with one another once the state of Israel has been destroyed. And I mean, again, he's right when he says this. You asked the question. You said that they were ripping people out of their homes, and the only time Israel ever ripped anyone out of their home was when they ripped their own fellow Jews out of their homes in the Gaza Strip that they abandoned back in 2006, 2007.
And I want people to know that when they now see now this is I believe that this is a custom from ancient. When they left, when they allowed these people to take over Gaza,
Mhm.
they left it with these greenhouses. They
Yeah,
left them with it was like they left them there with enough stuff to build upon what was there.
yeah.
Do you know these people tore down everything?
Yeah.
Well, I don't know if they tore it down, but they, instead of building upon it, they went underground. I think they did kind of tear or didn't use the stuff that was there for its purposes, and went underground and built these massive tunnels,
Yeah.
not for the people, to
Right.
hide themselves
Uh,
near the people, so then in 10, 20 years they could go and attack Israel.
right. That's it. That's it, Keisha. Like you said, they don't. There was no ripping Arabs. It's funny because they were sort of peacefully coexisting, kind of getting along.
Mhm,
The Arabs of Palestine, for the
mhm,
longest time, they rejected the label. They didn't consider themselves Palestinians. That was the name given to Jews
mhm,
until they became Israeli after the creation of Israel, the state of
mhm,
Israel. But the Arabs of the region, of course, consider themselves to be part of greater Jordan or Syria and whatnot. I
mhm,
mean, there were even Arab activist groups at the time who were petitioning the French to help, repatriate them to Syria or to Lebanon and whatnot. They
mhm,
didn't even want. They didn't care for it. But again, for the Jews made it plain. They made it clear
mhm,
that we don't mind sharing this land with our fellow Abrahamic Ishmaelite brothers. We don't mind, but the Arab Muslims would have nothing of it. A huge part of this and what helped to really radicalize the Muslims there was, of course, the British Empire. Because like he said, that the only thing that unites them is hatred of the Jews. It doesn't matter what kind of Muslim it is, whether it's an African, an Arab, a Turk, a Persian, a Tartar. It doesn't matter. In the First World War, of course, we're all familiar with the military campaigns of Lawrence of Arabia. Remember, you had the Arabian Muslims fighting Turkish Muslims on behalf of the British Empire during the First World War. Many of them were of the belief, this was the Arab contingent that helped the British Empire during the war. They were of the belief that by helping the British, of course, the British would award the land to them. But it didn't happen, and so in many respects, they sort of felt like they had been betrayed. And so again, there's a long story, a long history to it. But ultimately, what caused the Nakba, this great quote unquote refugee crisis, when they were pulled out of their homes and whatnot. Mind you, the whole during this whole time, from the end of the First World War to the beginning of the Second World War, we saw the rise of Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini,
mhm,
and the Arab Muslims of the region of Palestine were all in for Hitler. They were all in for Mussolini. And in 1945, 3 years prior to Israel claiming its independence, what's what's the word I'm looking for? There was the first inaugural meeting of something called the Arab League.
mhm.
Right,
Mhm,
right. This was 1945, and the primary goal, the business at hand, the business of the day of the Arab League, was to determine what to do about the Jewish state, or what they thought would become the Jewish state, right, at a point. And that's when the Arab League made the announcement to the Arabs of Palestine to vacate their homes. And they did so voluntarily because they were listening to their own Muslim leadership, because they predicted a quick and swift victory of the Israelis once they
mm.
decided to invade the day after Israel claimed its independence. But it just didn't happen that way. And so they've been using
It never does
right,
it? It never
right.
goes the way that.
And so they've been using the Palestinians as a beachhead to constantly act as a thorn in the side to the Israelis, because all non-Muslims are the sworn enemy of the Ummah of Muslims. It's quite clear. And so and like Musab said, that if it wasn't for Israel, they would be killing each other. I talked talked a little bit about this last week. The first war, as a matter of fact, remember I talked about the Battle of Yarmouk, when Khalid bin Awali, the Sword of Islam, when he took Damascus shortly after the death of Muhammad. Well, during that time, the first caliph, the first successor of Muhammad, was a man named Abu Bakr, right? And Abu Bakr, he led Islam's first war, which was something called the Apostasy Wars. And you can look this up, because, many Arabs began to doubt, they began to second guess the teachings of Muhammad. And thousands of Arab Muslims were put to death by the first caliph, Abu Bakr, in something known to history as the Apostasy Wars. This was in the 7th century. So again, they won't hesitate to kill each other. And they one of the earliest, you can look up the life of Omar II. He was that's going into a little bit of future, but he was another Muslim leader who was assassinated when he tried to modify Islam and try to kind of de-radicalize it. And he was assassinated in 720 AD.
I read when I was just looking at stuff preparing for the show tonight, I was reading how I think it was either Syria or like Yemen, where not too long ago they were, they wanted the women to cover up more, because, the women over there are starting to, they don't want to be all covered up. It's not everybody doesn't dress all the same. And so as far as the women are concerned, and so they were going up in their houses. This is the government, and telling them to get rid of their TVs and their satellite dishes. Because they were like, y'all need to cover up. Y'all need to put on some clothes. And my thing is like, since they are a warring people, they just fight. Like that's all they just want the smoke wherever they go and whatever they do. If you're not, like you said, if they're from their own book, they say if you are not a Muslim, you're the enemy. It's not Christianity where we're like, love your enemy and, be kind to people. They don't do that. You are automatically the enemy if you are not a Muslim. And so it's like, if these people would be willing to run up in your house, right, because you're not dressing how they want you to dress, their holy book says, if you don't do what we say, if you're not of us, you believe what we believe, you don't deserve to live. Why in the world would we want to import that into America? I just, as feminist as American women are, the modern woman, honey, you want to be walking around here dang on your bucket naked. You have zero concern. Not that I want women to walk around that way, but you have no concerns about this group that is trying to infiltrate your country. I mean, the amount of women who are supporting this foolishness, it just blows my mind. And I know we have a short night tonight, y'all, because it's already 9:00. I got one. Can you stay for one more clip?
I'm chilling. It's up to you.
Well, I got a hard stop. I guess it's not a hard stop, but I got
somewhere. Yeah, we ain't gonna push it.
We're gonna I'm gonna try to play 2 clips. We'll see how we do. But let me play this one.
Religion disguised as political ideology. Islam is a political ideology disguised as a religion.
What happened? What is Mecca now? Where's Mecca? It's coming. Change is coming to America. And what is Allah telling us? Kuntum khayra ummatin. You are the best of nations. You're better than everybody else. That's what Allah is saying. Let's work towards that. Let's work towards a Muslim mayor. Next election that comes in, nominate people for the school board of education. Next election that comes here, nominate people for the local township.
Stop, you're good there. So he said that pre-Zoran Mamdani, and then that's what they did. So let's go for the mayor. Now let's get the school board, because again, what you have to understand is Islam is inherently, the strategy is political conquest. I don't think most Americans, especially American Christians, we've grown up with an entire ocean in between us and really the center of Islam. If you'd have told me as a college student in 2001, right after 9/11, that I would fast forward 24 years and New York City would be, it looked like a 98% chance of electing like an openly Islamic communist, I'd have been like, you're crazy. But here we are. And I don't think Christians know how to think about, what do we think about and do about Muslim leaders seemingly infiltrating and targeting governmental leadership positions. So what we're not saying, and no Christian should do, Christians are commanded by the Lord to love Muslims as individuals. We are also very much commanded to oppose Islam as a false religion and ideology. So what people need to understand is that the stated goal of Islam is political and national conquest. That's what it always does. So that's why people are like, I got a little check engine light going on, when all of a sudden you've got people like Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib, and now you've got Zoran Mamdani, who's like, wait, the leader of the largest city in our nation, it's kind of like our little gemstone, is gonna be an openly Islamic, like this feels a little weird. What is the most common baby name in the 3 following cities? London, Dublin, and Copenhagen. It's Muhammad. So what you're seeing right now is through mass migration, is you're seeing previously Christian European areas, they're just getting overrun. Hundreds of years ago, there were no predominantly Muslim nations. So what you have right now is you have Muslims have a plan, and they're aggressively working their plan, where what you have is like well-meaning but naive Christians who have no political theology are actually discipling their people towards political sort of pacifism.
You muted, Keisha. Go ahead. Unmute.
Thank you. I said, I hate that he is right. Instead of pastors being courageous and bold and saying, no, we will not have a Muslim prayer call, another God's, just going out into the land. Like, I don't think Christians really understand the spiritual impact of that. Islamists, they understand it. They understand if my God's name is being proclaimed on your land, you are planting your flag. I mean, that's how I see it. You are planting your spiritual flag, because we have to remember that God, Yahweh, when the Tower of Babel was had been built, God came down. He was like, wait, what is going on? And I'm going to disperse you so y'all can't continue in your fool. I'm going to confuse your language and disperse you so y'all can't continue in your foolishness. But he also said that he put these, lowercase, lower G gods over these nations, these 9 nations. And he said, but Israel is going to be mine. And so when I see stuff like that, the people coming in with a foreign deity at the head, that's how I see it as a, like, Michael Heiser, who is a theologian that I love. He's passed away now. He actually lived here in Jacksonville, but he would say it's cosmic geography. And that's what I see. I see this as a cosmic geographical takeover, and I don't like it, Chuck. It's like do something about it. No, but the passive, the Christians who are being pacifist about this, you got your eyes on every other thing, but this entity that is literally coming in to disrupt your whole. How are you going to evangelize, if your town is majority Muslim. And there was, did I put this clip in? I don't think I had the clip, but there was I think this was in Detroit, where the mayor, was it Detroit? He told the Christian man, "You're not welcome here."
Yeah, because Dearborn's mayor.
I'm like, see, I could. This is why I cannot. I don't think I'm equipped to be a politician, because I would have come out of a whole bag. Y'all would not be like, "Oh, Keisha's a Christian." I promise you, it would. Y'all would have been questioning my salvation. I promise. Like,
I feel you.
I just don't. What do we need? Like, how? Let's end on this. How can Christians, knowing what you know about history and how these things typically go, what should we be looking for? What should we be doing to say, to try to get ahead of it? What do we need to be doing considering history?
Well, I think that a lot of Christian leaders, and I don't care whatever denomination, I don't care what you are, I couldn't care less. There needs to be more of this kind of talk on Sundays, or wherever days you go. So what is 7-day Adventist is on Saturday, whatever.
Right.
There needs to be a sounding of the alarm loudly that this is occurring. Of course, you do need, as feckless as they are, you need your politicians, and
For sure.
they must, and I know that may be politically incorrect. I mean, but you need boldness on every front, because they have to start framing the conflict in religious terms. Very few people are going to speak about Islam for what it is. Those in a political position. And this is something that America. I mean, this goes back to. I'll just give you a brief bit of history, because I'm not even sure if I have all of the answers. Unfortunately,
you don't
I
have
think
all the
that,
answers, Chuck.
well, as far as sort of like what we need to do, Keisha, to
I know,
prevent.
I'm just joking.
You know what I mean? It's like the pendulum swings. Unfortunately, when you look at. We look at, for example, when people speak about the Middle Ages, or the Dark Ages, right? They talk about how this was a time of immense suffering and struggle for Europe.
Yeah.
People say, well, what brought about what brought this about? What brought about the Dark Ages? But what it had a lot to do with, in fact, was Islamic conquest of Northern Africa, which gave Muslims control, over the Mediterranean. And once the Library of Alexandria was destroyed, a lot of intellectual works were destroyed, and Europe became racked with insecurity because their economic prospects had been cut off, right? Because it was the Muslims that controlled the seas. And also there was a lot of instability as far as demographic instability, because there were constant slave raids, sort of like what you saw on October 7th. So many white Europeans were taken into slavery along the Barbary Coast. And so there was this, because remember, Christian high civilization was Northern Africa, the Near East, and the Middle East. When Islam rose up, when Islam cut that off and kind of circumvented Europe and isolated it, Western Europe was cut off from its intellectual heritage to the East. And that's what really kind of prolonged the Middle Ages, and it lasted for 1,000 years. So, I mean, again, you just don't know when when Muslims went into Spain. I think it wasn't until the Battle of Toulouse, something like that, that in the 11th century, that Spain was actually able to finally kick the Muslims out for good. And of course, the Spain by this time was being led by Alfonso VIII, who won the Battle of Toulouse, that finally repelled the Muslims and pushed them all the way back into Granada, where they remained. And there was an actual name they called the Muslims who remained in Spain after they lost the Battle of Toulouse. They called them Madaharas, or something like that. In English, the word translates as tamed. These were your so-called tamed Muslims. These were the ones who were allowed to stay so long as they agreed to abide by Spanish law. Now, Keisha, we had something similar to that, and I say all of that because this is real life. It's not a movie, and unfortunately, the good guys don't always win. And I'm not some naysayer. I'm not some doom and gloom guy. I don't know if it's going to take a massive tragedy or something to shake this nation up out of its apathy, to realize what's at stake, to realize what's going on. Because part of me believes that just rhetoric and trying to educate people, may not do the trick. They may actually have to hit the wall, as they say, because no matter how much you tell them, they don't believe fat meat is actually greasy. And even some of our great, I wanted to circle around to this and make sure I cover this before we wrapped up, that as great as a lot of our founding fathers were, even they did not know, they did not perceive. Someone like George Washington, for example, the George Washington, he thought that, he welcomed the Muslims, because there were, in fact, Muslims here during the colonial period and during the time of the founding of this nation. There was a small bit of Muslims here, and there were questions amongst the founders and the framers as to or regarding what should be done about these individuals. And then there were many religious Christians, religious leaders in the nation, in the various colonies or and soon to be states, who had favorable opinions of Muslims even in the late 1700s, because they simply saw them as, yes, they're Muslims, they have a different kind of faith, but at least they are a religious people. I can give you real quick, Keisha. I know
Wait,
you can go.
George Washington, do you think he knew?
George Washington, but see, I'm getting to that because they didn't know until about the early 1800s.
He didn't know their beliefs.
Yeah,
he just knew that they were religious.
He just knew that they were religious, and they knew that they kind of had this supernatural command to sort of act morally. I'll give you, here's a quote from a Boston newspaper column back in the late 1700s. It said, quote, the person who wrote this column said, as far as the prospects of the Mohammedan, they said they're excited. They're describing the Mohammedan, or the Mahatman, the Mohammedan, as they call them. He's excited to practice. He is excited to the practice of good morals, and hopes that after the resurrection, he shall enjoy the beautiful girls of paradise to all eternity. Right. So he's talking about what Muslims are promised in eternity, right? They were promised these beautiful girls. He says of Muslims, this columnist, he is afraid to commit murder, adultery, and theft, lest he be cast into hell, where he must drink scalding water and the scum of the damned. I know what he doesn't realize is that if you die in the service, I can actually go. I don't know if I have time to, but I can actually go to the Quran and read you chapter and verse, where the Quran talks about the benefits of martyrdom, and why a Muslim should participate in the act of waging jihad. One of the signers of the Declaration of Independence, one of the framers, a man by the name of Benjamin Rush, he was actually a signer of the Declaration of Independence, said that he would rather see the opinions of Confucius or Muhammad inculcated upon our youth than see them grow up wholly devoid of a system of religious principles. So Benjamin Rush believed that he would much rather have American children grow up Muslim than to not be religious at all.
Yo, that's
Ge-
wild.
George Washington himself once said that in a famous letter he wrote in 1785 that he would welcome the Mohammedans to Mount Vernon so long as they were good workmen. So the idea was that even though they're Muslim, they're still guided by moral principles and moral precepts, and
Right.
they believed that these people were capable of being essentially law-abiding citizens.
Mhm.
And of course, it wasn't until a little bit later, a couple of years after the fact, that we began to question this notion that Muslims were just like everybody else. This was after the Muslims, of course, Keisha, began to hijack our ships along the Barbary coast. And they took our ships and held many Americans hostage in Northern Africa, and many of them were shipped to the Middle East. At this time, and I want to read something to you, Keisha. I promise I won't be long.
Mhm.
And there was a report written in 1786. There was a report that was penned jointly by Thomas Jefferson and John Adams in 1786. They were writing up a report describing their experience when they traveled to Great Britain to meet up with the ambassador of Tripoli. And because they wanted to know, why are the Muslims hijacking our ships and taking our people hostage? Here's what Jefferson, this is a small excerpt from the report that was written up to Congress. This is 1786, Keisha. Now tell me if things don't remain the same the more they change. This is what was being said in the 18th century. We took the liberty to make some inquiries concerning the ground of their pretension to make war upon nations who had done them no injury, and observed that we considered all mankind our friends who had done us no wrong.
Mhm.
And it not done us no wrong, not had given us any provocation, nor given us any provocation. The ambassador answered, I forgot the ambassador's name. He was, Muslim, from Northern Africa. He was ambassador to Great Britain. Here's Jefferson and Adams saying of what the ambassador says. He says, the ambassador answered us that it was founded upon the law of our prophet, that it was written in their Quran, that all nations who should not have acknowledged their authority are sinners, and it is their right and duty to make war upon them wherever they be found, and to make slaves of all they could take as prisoners, so that every Mussulman who is to be slain in battle is sure to go to paradise. Jefferson and John Adams were taken aback. They said, what in the world have we gotten ourselves into? So then the game, Keisha, became, well, what do we do about this? Because they refused to give our hostages back, or their hostages back. So they offered jizya.
Mhm.
Thomas Jefferson said, to hell with them, let's take them to war. John Adams said, no, we should sue for peace. We should pay them.
Mhm.
So because at the time, our naval forces were not as strong as theirs, we paid them tribute. We kept paying and paying and paying and paying them, and they kept upping the ante. There was a famous case in American history of the voyage of a military officer whose last name is Bainbridge. I forgot his first name, but he traveled to I think it was I forgot what part of Northern Africa he traveled to in order to make these payments. Remember, this is the 18th century. There were no wire transfers or anything like
Yeah.
that. So you had to travel to make these payments. And they kept upping the ante, upping the ante, upping the ante. So one time during the famous voyage of Bainbridge, you can go and look this up. He meets up with the Muslim spokesman there, And he tells him, no, what you're going to do is, first of all, he told him to lower the American flag, take your flag down off your ship, and erect the star and crescent. So they take the American flag down,
Stop, Chuck.
erect the
You're
crescent.
kidding me.
The voyage of Bainbridge. I'll send it to you when we end the live. So he lowers the American flag. He puts the Islamic star and crescent up. Right. You didn't hear the worst part yet.
Oh gosh.
Because at the time they're still trading in slaves. So while we're trying to figure out ways to end slavery, they're still openly trading in slaves, and they have no plan on stopping.
And we had stopped the going to Africa part and getting slave. I know by then.
Yeah.
I know by 87 we had, or 86 we had stopped that.
Right.
Yeah.
So he tells Bainbridge, not only you collect the money. He said, not only that, but I'm gonna treat you like an errand boy. Take my slaves and send them to Damascus. He doesn't want to get killed or captured, beheaded. He takes the Muslim slaves and takes them to Damascus, but it doesn't end there. He tells them, and I'm going to have someone watching you. I'm going to send a small contingent of mine aboard this ship with you, and you are going to meet their religious requirements by, on your voyage to Damascus across the Mediterranean. He said, you're going to make sure, or whatever route they took, he says, you're going to make sure that you turn the ship around 5 times a day to make sure that the ship is facing the east so that my men can pray. They said, okay, enough is enough. George Washington wrote a letter to one of his friends. He said that in such an enlightened age, he said, I don't understand why the British in this enlightened age, he says to one of his friends, why are our European friends allowing them to do this? He says that we need to, mind you, George Jefferson, by this point, he's out of office. He says that we need to,
not George Jefferson.
Washington. George Jefferson. What am I talking about? George Washington. Yeah, George Jefferson. George Jefferson probably would have had it. But right. But George Washington says, man, we need to create a navy and we need to crush them because we can't keep making these payments. So that's when the United States Congress passed the Naval Act in 1974. And it is because, Keisha, of Muslim aggression during the days of the Barbary Coast War, or this was started the Barbary Coast Wars. It is because of Muslim aggression, Keisha. That's why we have a navy to this day. It's why we have a navy. The Naval Act of 1794 was passed by Congress to fight the Muslims, but it took us a while to build up our fleet. Once our fleet got strong enough, by the time by the time Thomas Jefferson was elected, Thomas Jefferson said, we're not paying y'all no more. Kick rocks. And you're gonna give us our men back, or you're gonna have hell to pay. And that's when the war began. And of course, the short of it is we won. But we've been dealing with this problem for centuries. And even back then, Keisha, in the 1700s, you had people who thought, what's the big deal? They're just Muslims. They're just like us. And Jefferson, this is why to this day, Keisha, I don't know if you heard about the famous, I don't even know where it's kept, maybe the library. I don't know where it's kept. Somebody could put it in the comment section, but it still survives to this day. Thomas Jefferson had his own Quran. He had a copy of the Quran. And the story goes, of course, that Thomas Jefferson had this Quran in his possession because when he made his diplomatic trip to Great Britain to speak to the ambassador of Tripoli, he was so taken aback by what he was told, he had to learn, what is this Islam? He had to learn about it. And that's when he realized that anything ain't what he thought it was. And that Quran still exists to this day. And I think even some Muslim lawmakers, I think Keith Ellison, I think, was sworn in on Thomas Jefferson's Quran. Yeah, Keith Ellison. Yeah, well, he was a member of the Nation of Islam, so I don't know how if they really count. But
Yeah.
yeah, you have some Muslim lawmakers who are sworn in on Thomas Jefferson's Quran, ironically. And like I say, the Quran was so that he can learn the ways of the Muslims, so that he can know how to fight them. So he can know what
Right.
made them, so that he can know and learn sort of like what made them tick.
People always have beef with Thomas Jefferson, and I mean, I'm not like a founding fathers like scholar or anything, and I do know like some of them weren't all Bible believing Christians. I think Thomas Jefferson was one of the ones that they consider more of a deist and not, you know, accepting all, all of the tenets of the Christian faith. But why does it seem like Thomas Jefferson was the one that was like about that life? Like, no,
Oh,
like,
yeah.
no, we're not doing that. And
I happen to
strange.
like Thomas Jefferson. And like I
Yeah.
said, Thomas Jefferson, he was another voice in the beginning. He was
Mhm.
very, very heavily influenced by John Locke.
Mhm.
And
Oh yeah, like
John,
more of the Enlightenment.
so yeah, John Locke, his main goal, his primary thing was, toleration. He really believed that toleration was a chief virtue, because we had crossed over into this new enlightened era.
Yeah.
And this is sort of like, again, it's inherent within the language of the Declaration of Independence that we hold these truths to be self-evident. And so this is when you fast forward a few decades down the line, right, with the death of God, as Nietzsche would put it. Nietzsche, he was critical of the premise that any truth, for that matter, is quote unquote self-evident. He said truth cannot be, you can't arrive at truth this way. And Nietzsche sort of had a point, because it makes you wonder, it makes you question, if this
Mm.
truth is self-evident, why is it so hard for most people to see? It doesn't always work out that way. Truth, as we understand it, sometime is it has to be
Re-
forged. Yeah, it has to be sometimes forged, like steel. Like when you make something, or you make a weapon, or make a
mhm.
sword. It has to be,
Developed,
because
like,
yeah,
well, I would say like
yeah,
revealed,
right, because
But I
because
understand where
because yeah, because ultimately, Keisha, life is not about, and again, this is one of the things that Rousseau was critical of Locke,
Mhm.
because Rousseau, the chief architect of the romantic pushback of the humanism of the Enlightenment, believed that what the Enlightenment was doing was, it was slowly stripping life of its meaning, because that's the driving force. Because even when you have comfortability, to go all the way back to bring it full circle, why do we criticize the Jews? It is because that when you give somebody something, when you give them comfortability, when you give them leisure, they resent you for it, because the struggle is what makes them feel like they're alive.
I always talk about that. And Frederick, without
Yeah,
struggle, there is no progress. You need
but
struggle. We talk
yeah,
about this with our kids all the
yeah,
time. We're
because
trying to
they
get our
just want to
kids to
feel.
experience more struggle. Like that's a thing that me and my husband are trying to actively do, because our kids are so comfortable. And we
Yeah,
were talking about this the other night, how we see some things in them that we want to strengthen, and it's like the only way to do it is to make them go through things
yeah,
that seem to come natural to us. And then, like, as we were talking, we were like, well, it didn't really come natural. Our lives are just totally different. So when we were going outside and playing with, either even with just your siblings, you're learning social skills, you're learning how to play, how to share, you're learning all these things. And when kids don't do that anymore, you don't have conflict that you have to resolve. You don't have, you know what I mean? You're on your phone. Everything is catered exactly to how you like it.
yeah,
So
and
you lose that ability that gives you an edge. The struggle gives you, it sharpens you.
yeah,
Challenge,
yeah. And that's, Keisha, when you look for struggle in the right places. Many people try to take on something, so that it's like, it's not approaching it from a standpoint of humility, in that you sort of accept things for the way they are, and you find a way to overcome despite those things. It's like, no, it goes back to, you mentioned the example of the Garden of Eden before. It's like, no, this is all wonderful and everything, but I would much rather partake of the fruit so that I can know
Take
the
the easy
knowledge
way.
of good and evil. I want to know, why do most people enter into, when speaking of Jewish wisdom, I love, when Dennis Prager, I heard him tell a story after his dog died, and he said that, it made him think about life when, you ask, a lot of people have this serious attachment to their pets, for example, their dogs, and, people's dogs die, they be, it upsets them.
Oh yes,
And
we've lost that.
and on
It's
right, and
sad.
on average, most people are going to outlive their dog. But why do people purchase dogs that they know is going to die?
Mm,
It's the same reason why they pursue love, why they pursue relationships when they know that most of the time it's going to end. It's probably going to end badly. And I'm sure if you're trying to find the one, or whatever, if you're looking for marriage or whatever the case may be, but people know that inevitably it's going to end poorly, or it has a potential to end poorly, but people do it anyway because they would much rather deal with the pain than to not feel. You
mm-hmm.
just want to feel. I don't
Yeah.
want paradise. I just want, as much as I appreciate it, I would much rather feel, because the sin, the evil, I want to, I want to
Mhm.
feel. And so it's the same thing when you say, well, why would anybody destroy the goose that laid the golden egg? Why would anyone want to destroy America? Why would anyone? We have it so good. We're so privileged. We have it so well. It's like,
Yeah.
but you have robbed me of the experience of feeling that struggle, because ultimately it's the struggle that gives their life a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose. And conflict, to take it back to something, to take it back to Rousseau, is, and even Nietzsche, when he talked about war, this whole thing that we were talking about, Keisha, with Islam and its confrontation with the West, it's not about economics. It's not about borders. It's not about Israel running the Palestinians out of their land. It has nothing to do with that. This is a war of perspective. This is a war of ideas. And this is why wars, ultimately, all wars are fought over ideas.
Mm. Yeah.
It's about what is the meaning? What is the true meaning of life?
Mm-hmm. And again, and I'll wrap it up here, going back to the garden. That is what Satan was trying to get Adam and Eve to pay attention to. This shortcut to the meaning, this shortcut to get to where God is going to get. The Bible said, God says that I will not withhold any good thing from those who walk uprightly. I'm not trying to withhold anything good from you, but there is timing. So I fully believe that God is, I know he was fully prepared to one day allow full access to the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of the knowledge of good and evil. That was the plan. He was never going to deny Adam and Eve, but we do have to walk in God's timing. We do have to be obedient, because the purpose of life is to worship God. It is to worship God and to do good amongst his people. That's what we're here to do. That's what we're gonna, if you are blessed, if you have accepted Christ as your Lord and Savior, uh when we are in the new heaven and the new earth, that's what the Bible tells us that we're gonna be doing. We're gonna be going around living our life. We're gonna still be doing stuff. We're gonna have assignments. We're still gonna do stuff. We're going to be worshiping God. We're going to be serving each other and worshiping God. God's plan he's going to get his plan. He wants his family, he wants his heavenly family and his earthly family to be one big family. And that was the plan from the beginning, and that he's going to have his way. Now, you can either be in on that or you won't. If you are Muslim and you happen to come across this, I highly encourage you to read the Bible. Just read it. see if it speaks to you, because there is freedom and true liberty in Christ. And so I'm not trying to do an altar call or anything like that, but I just like God wants all to be saved. I don't wish for anyone to experience, to be separated from God. And so, I pray that if you don't know Christ, to get to know him, because it is truly how you truly will be free. And one other thing, this is probably opening up a whole nother, you know what, let me not ask that. But I'm curious, like, what do the women get if they are martyred? Because you always hear about the men, you say they're gonna get these 72 virgins. What do the men get? What do the women get?
Oh yeah, the women don't get anything. Women are on the level of dogs in terms of their spiritual value. Muhammad says this explicitly. He says that the only goal or the purpose of women is to shame their men into uh, doing about face and going back out onto the battlefield, because it is considered, it is a violation of the Quran for a person to turn his back to an enemy. This is Quran chapter. I just happen to have it pulled up because I had a couple of things queued up in case the conversation went in certain directions. It says in the Quran in chapter 8, verse 15, "O believers, when you face the disbelievers in battle, never turn your backs to them. And whoever does so on such an occasion, unless it is a maneuver or to join their own troops, will earn the displeasure of Allah, and their home will be in hell. What an evil destination." So even during various battles across these 14 centuries, the women would stay back. And if any of the Muslim men would retreat, they were beaten and pelted with rocks by the women and told that they had to go back. And
Yeah, boy.
so yeah, and then there's all sorts of, as far as especially like sex and whatnot. What I mean, Muslim men, they're allowed 4 wives, but Muhammad could sleep with, he can have as many wives as he wanted. This
Not
is
only the wives, but he wanted little.
yeah, the girls, and this is in the Quran too.
What is it? The Zuts? They have sex with like little boys too.
Yeah, boys as well. Like I said
It's
last
crazy.
week. Yeah.
But I, I don't want to do like a third, but I feel like we're like really just kind of, we're gonna have to talk about it again. We are, because this is a topic that I am not gonna like. I'm not seeing. I feel like this is for those of you who don't know, if you haven't followed me long, I was at the forefront at the education movement that was happening in 2020. I was like one of the original Moms for Liberty members and was their spokesperson. I feel like it's kind of the same thing, like where all of this stuff is happening, and we haven't coalesced enough yet. And so I'm like, I want to talk about this because we need a Americans against Islamists.
Yeah.
Don't Islam my America. Hey, did you guys like my thumbnail? Islamerica. How I was pretty creative. I like that. Because we definitely don't want that. I should have put a little a scratch through it. But I want to say thank you to Jesus Loves You for moderating. Antonice, thank you, thank you, thank you. I really appreciate you guys. Lily, you seem to be new here, but you have added so much value to the conversation tonight. Thanks so much. Karen, Amir, Paul, how's that baby? Paul, how's the baby?
and
DT.
and and then yeah, Keisha, when Great Britain and France and Germany and Portugal and Spain and all these countries, um, when they finally decided to rise up, that when when they began to move into like Africa and Asia, we call it imperialism and colonization.
Hmm.
Yeah, that's what you don't hear this in a lot of the renderings of the time, as far as tell the tale of manifest destiny and white man's burden and all these things as far as
Hmm.
colonization is concerned. But that was a main focus and a main goal as well of European imperialists, was to really get a front row seat in terms of, or to see exactly what was going on in these Muslim lands that used to be Christian. So the closest attempt that we got at sort of reconquering these lands was colonization,
Mm.
and
Yeah.
of course it was with the help of the Soviets. Our influence on these colonies began to wane in Africa and Asia and parts of Latin
Hmm.
America. Of course, went the way of the Soviets of of communism.
Yeah. Because then
Yeah.
it was, the white man, the colonizers, and they just flipped. They just, I mean, it makes sense why the Muslims would, attach themselves to that. It's an easy grift. It's like, oh, okay, well, shoot, I'm brown. I
Yeah.
can fit right, I can ride that train right on up in through America. Shoot, what they gonna say? I can just point to the white man. Jews
Yeah.
is white too. Yeah,
Yeah.
we oppressed.
Yeah.
Yeah, who don't
European.
want to be the victim? Oh, it's so cowardly. It's so cowardly. That is not the spirit of America. We don't, I know it seems like that. I mean, that's the way the country has been going, but that's not who we are. That is not who we are, just to sit around and blaming everybody. We would have never built America sitting around blaming everybody and waiting on somebody else to come and do for us. We would have never, built America looking at what you did it with, you oppressed us, you didn't give it would have never happened. This wonderful experiment that we are blessed to call our nation, our home, to be a citizen of, would have never happened if we would have descended into victimhood, which is the thing that is now ruling our nation. It's shown up on the left and it's rising on the right. We have to gut out this victim mentality, or it's going to end. This experiment is over, because there is no way you don't have confidence if you always blaming somebody. You don't have there was a picture of Michael Phelps. He's a swimmer,
Right.
and he's kicking butt, and then you see him in the next lane. The guy is looking at him to see what he doing, but he's behind. Mike
Right.
is focusing on his game.
Right.
He's not looking at what nobody else, he's focusing on his assignment. And that's what we need to get back to as Americans. Focus on our assignment, our ideas, our values, our culture. Teach him, Chuck. What are you putting out next? What are you working on?
Oh man, if the next thing I do on my live, I'm supposed to be doing a live with Chad O coming up
Mm-hmm.
next week
Cool.
after he drops episode 5 of the MLK project.
Yes.
I'm not going to spoil the episode, but we get into the McCarthy era.
Okay.
So we're going to talk about Joe McCarthy. We're going to talk about, because you've all heard the traditional interpretations and traditional renderings of McCarthy and his legacy and what was going on at the time. But the episode covers it, and Chad and I will probably do a live stream maybe next week sometime, talking about episode 5, and we're really going to dive deep into Joe McCarthy. Other
Oh.
than that, that's the next thing, and like I said, I'm just, I really want to walk through Iran, its transformation
Mm-hmm.
from a a fairly free country
Mm-hmm.
and an ally, to the United States and Great Britain. Hence, British Petroleum, right? The gas station. You all see those BP gas stations.
Oh yeah.
That was an Iranian company. That was an Iranian British company. And so I just want to kind of walk through how our relationship between Iran and the West began to change, the rise of Islam, and how the communists and the jihadis
Hmm.
took over Iran. And
Okay.
yeah, if I can ever get back around to it, I plan on doing that. If I ever get around to it,
Definitely.
but because I could collaborate with you and collaborate with Chad,
Mhm.
I'm happy and content with just doing that. You know what I mean?
Well,
But
we like when you do your thing because you know, it's just different when you do it. It's not the
you
same
but
thing.
when I can, I'm just busy with work and everything else. I hardly have a moment to breathe, and it does take time for me to do those. So put those things together. So
Yeah.
it
So
does take
that's
time.
gonna be on Chad's channel, right?
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
so that'll be DT. That'll be on Chad's channel. Anthony's, thank you so much for the super chat. She says, great show and cute thumbnail. Why, thank you very much, dear. I appreciate that. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Oh, one last thing. Please pray for Chad because he got some serious death threats over the last couple of days. Pray for him, keep his family in prayer. I mean, it's not much that doing all we can do, taking it, tagging the FBI. He showed it. So I've tried to, just at least tag the FBI and those who go after people who are trying to do those things. So let's keep him in prayer. We all get death threats. I think it is heightened now because of obviously what happened with Charlie Kirk. So yes, Paul, he did, and the dude. I mean, it was, to me, it was pretty serious. Like, the guy was kind of relentless a bit. He was graphic. And pray for Chad. Pray for Chad, please. All over MLK. This is where we're going. All of this, you can't blame, nobody wants to take accountability. Nobody wants it. Everybody got the conspiracy theories and all that, but nobody wants to deal with the real things that are right in front of our face. We want to go into la la land. Anyway, let me
Yeah.
stop with that. But keep him in your
Lily,
prayers, his
yeah.
family.
And to go back here, man, and Lily, this person here in the comment section made a good point when she says, or he, I'm assuming it's a woman. Lily sounds like a woman, but
Mhm.
when they said the golden age of Islam is when they conquer Persia and claim Persian inventions and slowly stop the spirit of invention because Allah knows best. And they're right. I mean, Persia was, it goes back to what we were talking about earlier, just trying to predict and war game this thing out.
Mm.
Persia is not the country it used to be. It's not the place it used to be. And I'm not talking about the constant wars with the Greco-Romans, which really did a number on it. As I said
Mhm.
before, this is what kind of allowed Islam to go into separate directions, in an attempt to take over both Rome and Persia.
Mhm.
But Persia was the way Persia was for the longest time is because there was a lot of cultural transmission between the Persians and the Romans. They had a lot in common. They had different gods and these things, and they were bitter rivals most of the time. But the history of Persia is very interesting, and it's extremely unfortunate what occurred in Persia, and unfortunately, it'll never be the same.
Yeah. Yes, you guys pray for our country too. Pray for us. We're praying for y'all. I certainly do. My husband do. We do in our family. But thank you, Chuck. I really appreciate it. Y'all, while we are watching this, let's just not be hearers of the word. Let's be doers of the word. Get involved, speak up. If you get a group of your neighbors, to talk about what's going on. So you can go as a group to these city council meetings, to these school board meetings. We can't just sit back, and just watch things happen. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I am feeling much better. So hopefully this week we will have, a bit more content. Y'all saw I was having a couple hot flashes, but I am much better than I was last week. So thank you for your prayers. And you guys have a great rest of the week. And I will see you on Monday and hopefully throughout the week. We'll see you next time. Bye.